God, I love that music. Really fires you up. I mean, the atmosphere in here is absolutely electric, so I'm really delighted to be here. I want to sort of start by pulling up this visual on stage, right? Because on my way here and last night, I had the privilege of learning a lot about your backgrounds. Yep, I was spying on you guys. So I know a lot more about you than you think. A bit scary. Segmentation, hyper-targeting in my mind. And one of the observations I made was that we're at this convergence point, very exciting, where the world of brand marketeers and performance marketeers is completely blurring. Any silos that did exist are breaking down, and they're breaking down fast, or perhaps they've already broken down already. And this is where digital technologies can truly help. Rather than just tech for tech's sake, or technology that's just for the elite few, right? Because there's no point to that. I want to democratize technology. I want to open this up to a wider audience where you can use this in two capacities, right? Because you're sat here today, not just as a marketing or advertising expert, no matter where you are in that ecosystem, MD, director, manager, C-suite, I really don't care. What I care about is that you've got two hats. One is your work hat, and the other, actually, which is even more important, is the human hat, right? You're here just as intrigued to learn about how some of these advances you're hearing about from all of us speakers here today can actually reinvent your everyday life and your reality as you know it. So I'm going to sort of dive into three particular advances. Emotive AI, which is a kind of new strand of artificial intelligence that actually perceives and then responds to human emotion with remarkable accuracy. Mixed reality constructs that use things like VR plus AR plus, one more element that I'll reveal in a second, to create immersive brand experiences that we've never had the chance to experience before. And data science, which goes well beyond traditional analytics, right? That looks at incoming and outgoing data, but applies very advanced data science that previously was completely out of our reach. It was just kind of in the innovation labs, floating around somewhere, and now it's hitting the mainstream. So how can you use these three types of advances to make your organizations, your strategies, your approaches bigger, better, faster, stronger, but more creative? Kind of infuse a bit of imagination and spark in it, right? Because we're in the media industry. And this isn't just transactional. We actually want to have a more holistic approach here. Bring things to life for our audiences and our stakeholders, no matter where you are in that equation. But even as we're becoming more digital, digital technologies themselves are becoming intrinsically more human, coming back to kind of address our core needs at the heart of who we are. So it's kind of the context piece, who we are, why we think the way we do, why do we share the content that we do, getting really into the depths of our minds, unraveling what makes you and you and you tick. I want to understand what sparks off that thought process in your mind when you're looking at different content on different devices, multi-platform, multi-everything, on, offline, on the go. I mean, we could go on. And what we want as consumers and as marketers is to make that experience very seamless. So you go from one medium to the other without actually having this abrupt divide between the two. Now, I believe that we're at an absolutely pivotal stage right now. We're very fortunate to be here. We're in the midst of a fourth industrial revolution, unlike anything that's come before it, entirely unprecedented. And what this means is that even in the midst of all of this, it's a human-centered revolution. We don't want to end up at the end of this decade or the next with the kind of Oppenheim moment of what the heck have we just done? To have questions about ethics and morality, surveillance, the big brother sort of attitude. We don't want to get to that place. And I'm kind of what they call a positive futurist. I try and make sense of this dizzying influx of noise. There's so much goddamn noise coming at us, right? From the digital world, from the offline world, competing for our attention. So how do we uncover then which of those elements we need to actually capture, use, embed, extrapolate? How do we make sense of that? I'm going to help you do that today. So just to give you a quick idea of my background, I'd rather have other people tell you what I do than have this list of credentials. I was the head of digital media for Telefonica for over 5 years. Before that, a business and technology journalist for CNN and Reuters. And then now, I'm what they call a futurist. So what the heck is a futurist? Now, I'll be honest, I don't love the phrase. It sounds a bit vain, a bit obtuse, as though I have some sort of remarkable window into the future. I try. But where this came about is I was chatting to an MIT data scientist about 3 years ago, and he said, "What do you do?" And after about 4 sentences in, he went, "Well, hang on, why didn't you say you're a futurologist?" And I went, sounds a bit weird, like evangelist or chief productivity officer, kind of self-appointed title. But actually, it makes a lot of sense. And futurism isn't just about looking ahead. It's as much based on rigorous research, looking at what has come thus far, where we are now, and then merging that together to make an informed view of where we'll go, and feeding into, for example, your business decisions as well. Now, we live in an age of utter and complete distraction. I don't care what demographic you sit in. Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen A, Gen B, my God, it just drives me mad, right? So my son is 3 years old. He can use the iPad better than my husband. And it terrifies me. He is a digital native first. He walks up to the television and starts swiping at it. It's sort of this swipe left and swipe right mentality already. No matter how much we try to get him outside, he really, really wants that screen. And I think we need to create a situation where instead of being completely and utterly tethered to our devices, head down, right? We've seen this on the streets. We're all walking like this at airports, on flights we're like this. There's even a syndrome now developed by osteopaths called tech neck. It's a fact. They're actually developing creams to kind of, remedy that. They're developing osteopathy to correct the alignment of your spine. And so I want to use technology to lift us up, up, and away from that screen so we actually interact in the real world. And there's no need to forsake one for the other. The two can beautifully coexist. Now, as marketeers, you've got a couple of pain points, universal issues that you have to address now or you're in deep trouble. Number one, how can you enable completely fluid, seamless, frictionless access to information? You've heard of frictionless retail, right? Where you go from on to offline to in-store. Well, let's apply that to information. I want information now. I don't want to be confined to the 9-to-5 customer service impositions that your brand is giving me. I want it at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I want it to make sense, right? To make my life easier. So how am I going to do that? I'll show you a tool that does that. The second is, as I alluded in my intro, we've got to bring back some spark to this process, right? Make your everyday jobs really, really interesting, as much as they are already. Less transactional, and can also bring in some of the delight, the inspiration. And actually, technology isn't just clinical. A lot of people think it's this cold, clinical lines of code humming away in this kind of mysterious digital server somewhere in a parallel universe. It's not. Technology can very, very much help actually bring things to life. It can infuse humanity back into a digital age. And the last one is brand imprint. I want you to think about how you can use some of these advances so that your audiences and your stakeholders, and you yourself, have that brand imprint and recall well beyond just the point of transaction. We need to go beyond that. Create a sort of sustainable momentum rather than blink and you'll miss it, sizzle and fizzle, or a passing trend, which I'm really not interested in. So let's start with what's next for AI. Now, AI isn't at all a new concept. It's been in play for decades now, so it really upsets me when I see so much kind of mainstream attention given to it only now, and this kind of rhetoric of the robots are coming, we're going to be decimated. And the problem with that is that we do have a way to use AI to augment our lives and our jobs rather than completely obliterate it. Now, absolutely, job displacement is a very, very real and tangible concern, and Dean elaborated that very, very eloquently. But I want to paint a picture for you of a different strand of AI that actually would keep you in your jobs and free you up to focus on the really high-level stuff to justify your positions and the HR spend on your role. So, a very interesting stat that I saw last week, and I had to share it with you. Probably a bit of trouble in marital relationships off the back of this, but we will interact more with bots then we will actually have conversations with our partners. A little bit worrying, but actually probably quite helpful, because those conversations, those two-way conversations, will actually be able to help us balance our work and home life much, much more fluidly. So I want to talk to you about emotive AI. What is this, and why should you care? This is sort of conversational commerce, and I'll illustrate that with a video in a second, which essentially is a very digital, kind of human face to what is otherwise a text bot, right? So many of you have used this, gone on a website, e-commerce website, and on the bottom right, up pops this kind of little automated box going, I'm so-and-so, how can I help? I don't enjoy using those at all. I don't find that at the moment they're primed to understand the nuances of the English language. They don't understand informal and conversational language. It's very rigid and stilted. 2 minutes later, I think, my God, my head hurts. Then I think, well, I need this information now, so I probably have to phone someone. Right, it's 5:45, their line's closed at 5. Right, got to do that tomorrow. One more thing to add to my list, one more pain point for me. Or I take to social media. And by the way, the average turnaround time for brands responding to people on social is still, across industries, so not just media, 38 hours. What I'm about to show you will reduce that to 5 minutes. So we want instant access, we want conversational commerce, and we want to have a human face on it all. So let me give you paint a picture for you of what that means. So just imagine that this person here, looking very puzzled, is either you. It's Friday, it's 6 p.m., you've had a really painfully long week, you still got a report to file, you've still got something to do for a client, and you are exhausted. I mean, how many of us think on a day-to-day basis, my God, I need 2 of me. 1 of me isn't enough. I need more of me to go around. Well, you have digital twins now that can do that for you. Or imagine that this is a stakeholder, client, member of your target readership or audience or viewers, no matter what medium they're looking at this from. And they want access to some information, whatever that might be, and they wanted it, 2 hours ago. So they need that instantly. They're annoyed, they're irked, they're puzzled. Perhaps it's yourself, you're agitated, and you need help right away. And you're looking at this on either digital signage, any sort of screen, tablet, computer. You're either on a website, an app. No matter what interface you are accessing this from, the emotion is very real, right? You're either stressed, agitated, annoyed, or just impatient. And then one of these appears on your screen. This is what they call a digital human. It's being developed, in fact, if any of you are interested, by some guys called Soul Machines in New Zealand. I have no commercial affiliation with them, but I'm very fascinated by what they're doing. So the same guy that created all the effects for Avatar and some of the really big Spielberg films went on to create this emotive AI concept. Looks like a human, and what this would do is essentially acknowledge your state of confusion, in a very normal voice with inflections. Right, God, I'm sorry you're feeling a little stressed right now. You're clearly agitated. What can I do for you? Right? You say, I need this, and I need it now. Can you pull this up for me? Can you make sense of it for me? Can you analyze it? Goes, yep, sure. Hang on a sec. Stay calm. I will get you there in 2 minutes. It then mines the data that you've given it access to, and then extrapolates what you need from it, responds to your emotion, does all of this in 5 minutes. So less than 5 minutes later, you're on your way out. Home, or for drinks with mates. Brilliant. Problem solved. So I'm going to illustrate this with a video so it really, really brings to life what this actually means. Now, bear in mind that when you hear this avatar speak in the video, this is still from a year ago, and it's evolved massively since then. And so even the way this avatar speaks to you will sound a lot more like me, not like this. Yes, I can help. Shall I make a booking? No one wants to bloody hear that, do you? So I'm going to play you this video and let me know what you think.
Nice to meet you.
Well, at New Zealand, we're exploring lots of different digital innovation, and the reason for that's very simple. We know there's lots of pain points and frustrations that we can solve with digital innovation. We want to make the experience better for our customers. Well, artificial intelligence is one of the big areas that we are very focused around, and we've started initially with Oscar the bot, And then now we're partnering with Soul Machines, which is an absolutely fantastic New Zealand company, to create a digital human called Sophie, who's also powered by IBM Watson.
Economy Sky Couch is a row of 3 economy seats that turn into a couch in the sky.
And the whole purpose is really to investigate, to explore the role that digital humans can play in improving the customer experience.
It was like talking to a real person.
She's very clever, knows a lot about New Zealand.
It was really cool.
The future of customer engagement as a blend of digital and human. People interact with a virtual human so much differently than they would with an actual human. And you capture a lot of insights from that.
You're going to get the same sort of emotional responses and the non-verbal communication cues that you'll have if you're sitting face-to-face across the table with a real person.
You can see that as that Rachel's brain sees through the camera in my laptop here and listens to what's going on around, different parts of her brain are responding to different stimuli. So I'm going to be quiet for a second. And you can see different parts of her brain now lighting up as the virtual neuroadrenaline kicks into her alert system now that she's had a bit of a fright.
Everything they do is related to what the person's doing that's interacting with them. So by giving the computer the ability to have a face-to-face interaction is just really adding a whole new layer of enhancement of communication between people and technology.
So, as you saw from that, what we can do with this constructive emotive AI is actually recreate a human kind of nervous system in a virtual world. It's a virtual nervous system that actually responds to the same biological cues. Now, how does this actually work? You would need to enable the front-facing camera on your device. If you find that too creepy, you can choose to activate just audio. What it would do then, video or audio, is if it was video, for example, they are programmed to actually read your facial expressions and your micro expressions, right? The slightest flick of an eyebrow, slightest lilt of the mouth, the slightest tip of the nose and the chin, to tell you what your state of mind is with remarkable accuracy. I mean, I was very skeptical when I first heard about this, and I've trialed it, and I mean, I was absolutely amazed. You don't have to sort of be going like that or like that for it to get it. Very, very micro inflections in your face and your voice, and it picks it up. With audio, it's the same. Essentially can detect inflections and tone changes in your voice to tell you how you're feeling. Then acknowledge that mood, play that back to you, because we all like to kind of have that validated. And then just do the real deal by finding the information you need in record time. Now, something like this is actually being trialed quite heavily by the brands mentioned up there, and some of the early evidence is actually very, very promising. Conversion rates are going up, people are delighted, people are educated, people realize they have access to something very quickly without relying on a moody customer service person or investor relations person or any member of the team. So actually, this strips some of that kind of element of the negative aspect of emotions out of it, despite being an emotional interface. So for me, where I see this really working is, A, you've got data that is always switched on. It's live, it's breathing. What this allows you guys to do as marketeers is actually make inferences from this about which points of the customer journey are the biggest pain points for your audience. Or indeed, internally, within an organization, to boost some sort of employee engagement, to understand whether your own employees understand your products and services as they should. So what's working for them, what's not, giving them access to that information, being able to service stakeholders, and ultimately democratizing access to personal service. Because something like this can be used as a digital twin to be your own virtual assistant, to be able to pull up stuff for you at rapid speed and actually still have that human touch. So for me, something like this is very much one to keep on your radar. Next, I'm going to move on to something that's very vivid. This is immersive reality, the construct of virtual reality, augmented reality, and one more element I'll show you in a moment. Now, before I start, let me actually make it very, very clear. You don't need to own a VR headset at home to use some of these things, okay? Number two, with augmented reality, where you hold up your phone and essentially it imposes a digital object onto your real world, right? I could basically use the IKEA app, place that there, and through my phone, it allows me to visualize a sofa sat right there. Very interesting stuff, but you can do much more with that. And that's just 2 elements of mixed reality. Then you add something called touch, and it becomes really, really mind-blowing. Now, I believe that this is going to go beyond just the gaming world. So at the moment, you might be forgiven for thinking that this construct of VR or AR is very much just for geeky gamers at the big fests and festivals and events in Silicon Valley. That's just not true. It's actually being used and rolled out as we speak in healthcare, manufacturing, engineering, and defense. So I advise a lot of these companies in my advisory work, and one of the things we've been able to do is really lift that engagement, and I'll show you some sort of evidence off the back of that. So we are now at this point where brands spent over $12 billion last year alone on augmented reality experiences for their consumers. Very easy to do, right? Because essentially it's fueled by your smartphone, so you don't need extra gadgetry to do this. On the top left, the IKEA app. Then you've got a whiskey distillery brand that's taking people through the backyards of their distillery and giving them that immersive experience. And then one really interesting one where a speaker company, and I won't mention who, very well known actually, are developing something that would allow you to actually work out how their speakers would sound, the actual acoustics, placing it in different parts of the room. So as you walk around your living room, you're like, oh, actually, yep, that set of speakers could work right there. It would actually relay that and mimic what it would sound like in real life if you placed those speakers and mounted them there. So very, very clever stuff. So this is going to mean big business, and it's being used indeed by the entertainment industry as well. Hollywood is a big kind of market for this, but why not media and marketing? This needs to absolutely be on your radar. Now, with VR and AR, headset or device, it's still visual or auditory. What it is missing is touch. Touch is so fundamental to how we explore our worlds, right? And if we lose out on that sense, we're actually missing a key part of our kind of physiological realities. So I'm going to show you how some advances are able to infuse a sense of touch into a brand experience that you create for your audience. So let me play this video. There should be some audio in this, guys. That's fine, you can still make sense of it without that. So what this uses is something called haptics technology. And what this is recreating the sense of force or vibration on your hands to make it seem as though you're actually touching an object, when in reality, all you're touching is mid-air. Now, it uses something called vibrotactile actuators, which I won't go into because it's very, very technical. The simplest form of haptics technology, which is what you're seeing on screen, is in effect the vibration alert on your smartphone. Simplest way to kind of bring it to life for you. So a more advanced version of that recreates the sense of objects and touch in the virtual world, where I might have a headset on or I might not. And essentially, I am holding mid-air, but it seems to you like I'm just kind of doing something ridiculous like that. But for me, it feels like actually grasping an object, manipulating it, moving it around. Now, that glove you're seeing on there right now, very, very early prototype, but I really wanted to introduce that to you as an illustration of how this actually translates in real life. But what we're going to move towards is, for example, using something like the HoloLens, or indeed other mixed reality headsets out there that are shockingly, by the way, quite affordable. So a lot of people think the economics of this is just unprofitable. That's just not true. We're talking about not £2,000, but 200 in many cases. And also to be able to walk up to digital signage at an airport, at any sort of advertising space, and be able to actually feel like you're touching an object that is appearing on the screen. I mean, that's bloody mind-blowing stuff, right? So to be able to bring something to life from digital and merge the on and offline worlds, I think is an invaluable brand opportunity. Now, what this could mean in terms of how it works as well is there are a couple of implications and use cases for your industry. What you could do, for example, is in early iteration, brainstorming and concepts, it would allow you in a networked way, so you could have someone in Sweden talking to someone in India, to someone in Dubai, to someone in Helsinki, all at the same time, simply by wearing the same gadget, which is, again, very affordable, and you are all manipulating and viewing the same immersive environment and being able to actually move objects around. So to be able to create concepts, prototypes, services, even to map the customer journey through one of your mediums, to bring that to life in that way, it's been shown to boost employee productivity and engagement and actually ideation from that. And the networked way for me is really fascinating. The other is actually training and hiring. If you want to be seen as a progressive company and you want to attract a new next generation workforce who are going to come and really bring your business to life, something like this could really help them experience the role before they've even started it. To be able to feel as though virtually they were actually meeting your CEO in real time, shaking your hand. I mean, that would be amazing. If I were to join Sonoma and I could have my headset on and feel like I was shaking your hand, that would be brilliant. It would automatically infuse that sense of reality and human touch to it, and the motivation from there is tremendous. The US Army has used this to boost conversions of people they're trying to target at hiring and career fairs from a measly 12% to 62% in a 6-month period. I mean, that's sit up and take notice stuff. And the last one is kind of project walkthroughs, being able to talk your stakeholders and your audience through concepts and plans and campaigns. I'm advising a media agency over in the UK, and we're currently testing this. And again, already the conversion rate in the first 4 months is very, very promising. So they're something that they want to use now in every client pitch. And we all need some help with that. Now, how this actually works is you could either have something called a haptic glove, very simple black glove that you slip on, or you could have a sensor that throws up ultrasound projections, like in the last bit of the video you saw with the digital screen, where it sends out these ultrasound vibrations and it makes it feel like you're touching something. Now, no matter what permutation or combination of this you use, VR, VR plus AR, AR plus touch, VR plus AR plus touch, there's a lot you can do with it. And the research is really there to kind of show you the evidence of using immersive media, and the memory encoding and the brain retention from that knowledge is 3 times that if you didn't use something like that. And the receptivity from within the firm in terms of employees wanting to use it, as well as consumers using it as a kind of persuasion tool, is tremendous. So it isn't just a silly little fad or a nice to have. We're now moving towards multi-sensory experiences where we're going to see the physical surfaces around us actually come alive with content. We want to be able to point our phone at an object and give us all the information we need from it, whether it's AR or through, in fact, something that's coming in the future, holographic technology. But that's a different talk on its own. And ultimately, if you're seen as using something like this, I think the engagement, the retention, and in fact, kind of luring in a client base would go a great way in doing that. And very quickly, I want to now talk about data as we start winding this down. Exabytes, petabytes, zettabytes, big data, big data, open data, small data, micro data, fast data. My goodness, the research I did for this piece, I mean, I literally saw something like 16 subsets of data. Forget about it. Park that thought. You do not need to know about this. Do not even trouble your mind with this. This is too much we've got to store up there. Take this out of the equation. Forget about it. What I want to show you is how you're underutilizing data and how you can use advanced data science tools that previously did not have any access in your industry that are now being opened up in the mainstream. Now, what this graph tells you very quickly, you don't even have to read it, is there are companies using this well and finding tremendous value from it. A lot of them, to be honest, are in the tech sector, manufacturing, engineering. Not so much in the others. And the ones that aren't finding value, the problems are twofold. When I kind of go in-house and I set up these innovation labs for people, or I do advisory work, I embed myself in their way of working to understand not just the data that's coming in, but the data that's going out. What are you creating that you're not tapping into within the organization? And in most cases, it boils down to one thing. They're not asking the right questions of the data, hence they're not seeing the right value. So you've got to ask the right question of those data sets, and then, yes, maintain the integrity of those sources. It has to be unbiased, valuable data and be really relevant to what you're trying to do. That stat's very interesting. At the moment, 80% of most organizations' IT or tech budgets go towards updating completely outmoded forms of infrastructure. If we invested even 1/5 of that in advanced data science programs, and a lot of startups developing some really, really great tools there, you don't even have to go to the big tech giants who we shall not name. You can actually look at the startups ecosystem and find some very clever, well thought out tools there that use machine learning with data and really kind of create that value for you as brands. If we did that, we stand to create new business lines, new value, and greater insights into our audience and our stakeholders. So what this is doing is completely taking out the need for you guys to know complex statistical programming languages or very intense interfaces or very obtuse data processing systems. You don't need to know that. Essentially, it gives you the tools of a data scientist in your hands. Now, these are two types of data that we're not using at the moment, that data science would allow you to tap into. One is data that's really rapid, really real time, often unstructured, just coming at you in waves, and you're not actually using it at the point that it is actually live. We're looking at it retrospectively. How did someone act when they did this? What were their user preferences? How did they want to consume this content? And that's not right. We need to be able to act on it now, because a good answer now is actually better than a more refined analysis later in terms of being able to actually create value from it. So as you're walking past, perhaps, let's say, a kiosk or a retailer, it being able to have some interaction with you that gauges your preferences right there and then uses that to generate a 15% off coupon on the spot. It's a great example of fast data. And then you've got lost data, stuff that we could get, but we're just not harvesting. This is also called data in the wild, by the way. So, Dean alluded to the vast number of sensors we're going to have in the billions. And as these objects start generating more and more hyperconnectivity, that kind of data needs to be captured. And actually, that's relevant to media, even if you think that that's just for the techies. It isn't just an IT thing. It's very much for all industries to make use of. Very quickly, some examples of this in action. It's being used by the government to predict corruption. Very, very accurate, by the way. In manufacturing, to preempt supply chain issues before they even happen. In retail, to make sure that the flow along the supply chain is completely undisrupted. And in the UK, the Home Office, right? So security, is using it with 98% accuracy to actually prevent dangerous terrorism propaganda from even being uploaded. It doesn't even allow it to be published. I mean, that's pretty good stuff. And a great kind of tech for social good example as well. Some of the sample parameters that you guys could use off the back of advanced data science tools is actually understanding the context. How are people actually responding to content? Not just how many shares, how many engagements, but actually what are people thinking when they consume that? And then also making sense of all our scattered digital identities on and offline to be able to pull that together and create a meaningful picture. And things like emotionality of headlines. There's research and tools that show that actually the last word of your headline can have X amount of impact and trigger X amount of response. And the second word does this and the third one does that. This takes the guesswork out of it for you. And indeed, if you want to look it up, there's some guys called Phrasee over in the UK that are doing this very well. They're converting kind of conversions from 15% to something like 62%, and they're very, very clever. So the kind of parameters it offers you are far beyond what you're looking at now or what boring data analytics tools can do. And what this would do for me is preempt something before you even know that you have that desire. So it's being able to really look ahead and understand your consumer before even they realize that they were thinking of doing something or the other. And really the main kind of value for me is uncovering all these meaningful hidden correlations and patterns between this incoming and outgoing data and taking the pain out of it for you guys and kind of putting it in the hands of what was a data scientist back in the control of the business, so you control the data and what it does for you. If we ignore this third wave of analytics, I think we stand to lose a great deal. It's kind of like you've got to look at this with if we didn't innovate, what would happen sort of point of view. How do you justify something like this? Well, if you didn't, you probably will be dead in the water in the next 5 years, with some serious implications for what insights you're generating for your brand and for your audience. So as I round up, I want to share with you 3 criteria that I use when I'm evaluating which digital technologies are best suited for which sector, which industry, which market, which organization. A, is it a catalyst? Does it actually spur innovation on? Not just, right, it solves this problem, and that's it. Okay, so you've got the marketing department that used it, but The business development guys are none the wiser, or the sales guys used it and the finance team haven't bothered. No, I want something that really resonates across business lines so you can blueprint this in the entire organization. Get people fired up to use these tools together. So does it spark off further innovation and further value? Number two, does it act as a connector? Does it bridge the divide between you and your audience, you guys amongst each other, and your own identity, your online identity and your offline identity? How is it actually the connector between those personas for yourself? And does it act as a conduit? Is it a mechanism, a funnel to create further access to information, to products, to services, to open up a world that previously didn't exist? You know, I believe at the heart of this all, we now have line of sight to a reality that's completely unprecedented. And where we are now is electrifying, breathtaking, and brilliant on one hand, and terrifying and daunting and overwhelming on the other. But I do believe that where we are now is the best playing field. And you guys in the media and marketing industry have all the value to play for. So you're very well placed here. You should go away from this feeling really energized and positive and hopeful, whilst being aware of all the caveats and the issues as well. But let's take that thought away. Use tech as a real driver for value on, offline, digital, not digital, on the go, no matter where you're using it. Thank you for having me.